Hey everyone, welcome back. Some great news. Our guest today, we recorded this about a week and a half ago, and since then, Luno, the crypto company based here in South Africa, or headquartered here in South Africa, has been and was the first crypto asset service provider to be awarded a license by the FSCA here in SA. A monumental achievement. So much work has gone on in behind the scenes in order to work with regulators to ensure that it's compliant, to ensure that it's safe, and a big congratulations to everyone involved in the ecosystem, but specifically to Luno, who really have led the charge. Once again, our show is sponsored by LexisNexis Risk Solutions, LNRS, and as part of their offering, they do a lot of work in compliance and AML, working with various different companies across the whole ecosystem to ensure that they are compliant and to ensure that they are satisfying the needs of the regulators, and most importantly, protecting consumers and businesses alike. So big thank you to LexisNexis. Please enjoy this episode. We're here with Christo, who's the country manager for Luno in South Africa. Thank you. Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Success. Joined today by someone I've tried to get on the show for ages, since I met him like 2 or 3 years ago. I'm joined by Christo de Wit, who is the country manager here in South Africa for Luno, who I'm sure needs no sort of introduction as to who Luno is. But before we get started, I just must say, we are not giving any financial advice on this podcast whatsoever. We are not talking about any specific coins. We are not telling you where to put your money. We're not telling you how to get your money out. We're not telling you where to invest or how to invest. We are simply here to talk about the crypto industry, because it's gone through such a change, such a period of change over the last couple of years. And here in South Africa, if you haven't sort of kept up with the news, there is new regulation where we're going to be the authority is going to be regulating crypto asset service providers, which we'll cover today. But I really wanted to get Christo on to talk about sort of how crypto has been adopted here in South Africa. I want to give this kind of a South African lens today. What are the sort of demographics? What are the trends that Luno is seeing in terms of the types of people who are investing in crypto? What sort of investments are they making? Are they using it as an investment? Are people using it as a store of value? Are people using it as a utility to then facilitate other forms of payments, where it be sort of cross-border, or maybe they're doing e-commerce or in the metaverse? I mean, I genuinely don't know. So I'm looking forward to this. Christo, listen, first of all, thanks so much for joining. I know it's a crazy busy time in your world at the moment. Every time I speak to someone that's involved in crypto, certainly here in South Africa, they're like, listen, I've got like paperwork up to my eyeballs. And I might see this. I might see the sun at some point in the next 6 months. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you. For those who perhaps don't know you, I can't imagine there's too many people that don't know Luno, but just in case, you never know. If you can give a quick intro, that'd be amazing.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me. Yeah, great to finally have this chat. So maybe I'll start off with Luno. So Luno is a cryptocurrency exchange. We are one of the largest crypto exchanges in South Africa. We are a homegrown crypto exchange founded right here in South Africa in 2013. We were founded as a company called BitX. And we were actually the first exchange enabling South Africans to buy Bitcoin with Rand. Fast forward all these years, we've rebranded as Luno. We are the biggest crypto exchange in the country, according to our customer share and then the amount of customers that we have. The bulk of South Africans that do have crypto, have dabbled in crypto, have done so through Luno. And we pride ourselves in that, enabling South Africans, taking them on this crypto journey. A little bit about myself. So as you said, I'm the country manager for Luno South Africa. What that means, I look after the in-market operations with a clear mandate to grow our operations here in the market. And that also touches on various things, making sure that we engage correctly with our regulators, making sure that our operations are set up in a way that constitutes that growth, and then having conversations with people such as yourself about what Luno is doing in the market. A little bit of my background. So I come from mostly a marketing background. I've spent a few years, around 6 years in Asia, where I worked in various fintech and technology companies. I worked for Rocket Internet for some time, and then I moved over to one of the biggest conglomerates in Thailand, working in a fintech there, in the mobile wallet and cross-border remittances space. And then I decided to make the move back to South Africa to join Luno. And I've been at Luno now going on nearly 2 years. So it's been a great journey so far.
Fantastic. I'd love to delve into sort of the early days, and I appreciate you've been at Luno 2 years, but I'm sure you have sort of an idea of kind of the journey of Luno. From a South African consumer perspective, how's the mindset changed? Because 11 years ago, crypto was still like, wow, what is this thing? Is it a scam? Is it just going to be a fly by night and it's going to die a death? So who was, if you could sort of identify the sort of demographics that were investing early on, maybe 11 years ago, and how that's changed over that period of time to where we are today?
So I think, rightfully so. And if you think back to 2013, crypto, Bitcoin, all of these things, it was very speculative. It was internet money, so-called. People didn't really know what it was. And then also the ability to buy Bitcoin was not an easy process. It was quite a very difficult, very challenging. And if you were not technically complex or advanced or curious, at least, you wouldn't have had any exposure to this. So that also speaks to the demographic, right? So those are the early adopters that came on, that they wanted to explore, wanted to delve into this new industry, this new internet money, so to speak. And that was reflected in the demographic as well. It also spoke to people who are very much the curiosity is driven by new developments and all of that.
Yeah.
Where we are now, we've seen a much broader shift in the demographic. We probably get to this a little bit later on in the conversation as well. But if you think about it, there's some of the recent estimates that we've seen in the media. It estimates that around 10 to 12% of South Africans have dabbled into crypto. Now, that's quite a significant amount of people. There's no real factual base for this estimation. There's a few studies here and there, but nothing concrete that we would say that we are fully comfortable with that number. But that's the number that we have and we go with. And I think that then also speaks to how we've moved from the early adopters, which was a very small audience that understood or was curious about Bitcoin, so to speak, not necessarily cryptocurrency as a whole, but Bitcoin specifically, and how we've moved on to now where there's, through all the cycles that the crypto industry has gone through, there's almost this plethora of cryptocurrencies available now. We've seen much wider adoption. And we kind of at that crossroads now where we're about to cross the chasm from the early adopters to the early majority, right? So people are speaking more about it. It's more part of the mainstream conversation. I'm not sure when last time you were in your car and you listened to the early morning shows on the radio, and when they give market updates, Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies is now part of that market update. That signifies to us that we are part of that early mass market adoption, where we see people getting more and more interested in it. And that's also supported by the regulation, right? So as there are a lot of conversations going on, a lot of movement in terms of the regulatory space, that also continues to bring the conversation to the forefront, but it also makes the mass majority or the mass market more comfortable with something like cryptocurrency that used to be this novel almost on the fringe asset class investment or internet money, or whatever, was to be labeled back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, again, we'll probably come to this a bit later on, but the utility behind cryptocurrency, it's no longer just a store of value or an investment vehicle. You can now use this to actually make purchases. I know there's a couple of the retailers here in South Africa now accept cryptocurrency, as a form of tender, right? You can go in, you can buy your shopping, your groceries, whatever it may be. So I think sort of demystifying that for mass market to say, actually, a few years ago, you wouldn't dream of sort of a QR code, walking into a shop and scanning a QR code to then go and make a payment. Now that's kind of the norm, right? That's how I pay my DSTV. I just scan the QR code and I pay. I suppose, with evolution and with regulatory approval and approval of, the South African sort of government, enabling individuals to be able to actually go and use their cryptocurrency to go and make purchases, I think then just sort of even more sort of solidifies the whole sort of business case or the industry around that. Now, just talk about that for a second. My girlfriend was in a shop not so long ago, and she got to the till, and there was a problem with their till system, right? And the lady said, "Listen, I can't accept your card or your watch or your phone, but listen, if you've got crypto, like we'll take a Luno payment." What? Which I think is amazing. To have cashiers now at till point or point of sale saying, "Hey, listen, there's an alternative way of paying. If you've got crypto, well, you can buy your your eggs and bread and milk using Bitcoin," which is something I don't think anyone's ever really heard of until the last maybe 6 or 8 months here in South Africa. Are you seeing from a Luno perspective, people your customers are using crypto to make purchases, or is that still quite early on? There's only a very small percentage that are doing that.
I think there's quite a lot to unpack there. So I think to address the last point, from a payments adoption using crypto as a way of payment and the transaction use case, I think it's very early on. And I think for that to be adopted by the masses, for that to become so part of our day to day, there needs to be large scale adoption of cryptocurrency, right? So that's not just facilitated through a centralized exchange such as ourselves, but the whole ecosystem. Yeah. So people need to receive their salaries in cryptocurrencies. The blockchain technology needs to be integrated into the payment system and payments landscape infrastructure that exists with, all the various regulatory players. So I think we are definitely at the right at the beginning of that evolution. And it is, for those early adopters who bought their first Bitcoin on Luno in 2013, to now be able to actually go to a supermarket or Pick n Pay and pay for their groceries or utility bills using crypto, I think that's a significant, leap that has happened. But I think if we take a few steps back and if we look at what was the foundation for crypto and Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin being the first crypto, with the white paper being released, I think it was December 2008, early 2009. It came out of the big global financial crisis of 2008, where all of this trust was in these central authorities, these intermediaries such as banks, where the whole global financial system entrusted their money. And Bitcoin, the Bitcoin white paper, was an alternative to that. So what if we take that trust away from these centralized intermediaries and we distribute it to everyone? So everyone holds the keys to the system. It's not just the banks. So if there are no central bodies that control the flow of money and the wealth of the world, it sits with each of us. Yeah. That would make a much better solution. And I think if we fast forward to today, what has happened in the crypto industry and how it has evolved, a lot of that still remains true from where Bitcoin was founded and the principles of that. But it has also evolved into something far greater and far more complex than originally envisioned. There are far too many cryptocurrencies in existence today to mention. I think the last count I saw was over 20,000. Now, the majority of the market cap of the crypto world sits within the top 10 cryptocurrencies. So it just shows that not all of them are actually legit and have a purpose. But we also have to look at the utility behind each of these coins that exist. So Bitcoin makes for an excellent store of value. In its early days, there's been a lot of comparisons between gold, that Bitcoin can be seen as digital gold. It has the same characteristics, the scarcity. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence. We've got a very exciting time coming up within the next 2 weeks or so. The next halving of Bitcoin happens, and we can delve into that a little bit later if we want to. But then we also look at the other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and how they, the developers of these blockchains have created utility for this, and how they're being used as a way to facilitate transactions, and how they are being used to facilitate smart contracts on these blockchains, right? So it has evolved into something far more complex. And I think to then say, okay, are we then all of a sudden in the next 5 to 10 years going to use Bitcoin for payments? I mean, I think it's a little bit premature to say that. I don't think fiat currencies and central bank issued currencies is ever going to go away. But I think that these two can exist. There can be a coexistence of these two. And I think if we see a merger of our traditional financial world onto the blockchain with kind of the Web3 development, I think the opportunities and the adoption is going to be far greater.
Christo, I just want to ask you a question, actually. You mentioned the top sort of 10 coins, or cryptocurrencies that are out there. You mentioned Ethereum, you mentioned Bitcoin, you mentioned XRP, Solana. So let's use those four. Are they classed, my understanding, they're a layer one cryptocurrency. And then underneath that, there are sort of layer twos, which are companies or individuals or businesses who are developing utilities and applications that use the cryptocurrency blockchain of, let's say, Solana, for example, to then go and facilitate whether it be cross-border payments or smart contracts or other utilities around that, right? Is that how it works? You have a layer one and layer two. Have I understood that correctly?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, and in the simplest way to explain that, yeah, the original cryptocurrencies and some of the most basic ones that we all know, the first layer. And then when we have the blockchain where, for instance, some blockchains are used for decentralized finance, for instance, that's the layer two coin that is then taken in to facilitate kind of the transactions on that blockchain. Okay. So absolutely. But I think that's getting very, very technical in that sense. And I think if we look at just bringing it back to a South African point of view, the majority of the adoption, I would say, sits in, the top two cryptocurrencies. We see that reflected on Luno as well. Bitcoin being the absolute market leader. Globally, that's also represented at the current market cap. Bitcoin holds about 50% of that total market cap in terms of cryptocurrency value. And then we see that at Luno as well. Ethereum coming in at number 2. And then as of the late, there's been this tug of war between, especially on Luno as well, in terms of what's the number 3. And from our data that we see, it's between XRP and then Solana as well. Solana making significant improvements over the last few weeks. Yeah. And we also see that in the market movements, a lot of growth coming through in Solana. So I think it's very easy to go, okay, wow, look at all these cryptocurrencies, and it's too technical and I don't understand, the technicalities behind it, the purpose and the utility that they hold and why we have all of these cryptocurrencies. But if you look at how South Africans are using it, primarily as a store of value, as an alternative investment, and that's how they make their decisions on which cryptocurrency they'll buy. We obviously have, traders on the platform that use it. We also have arbitrage traders that use cryptocurrency arbitrage. But if we look at the everyday retail customer that purchases their crypto with a certain portion of their monthly income, they use that as an investment. Okay. What has been very interesting as of late is we saw a lot of people holding on to their crypto, especially in the run up to this last rally we've seen over the last month or so. People bought Bitcoin, in the previous rally, in the run up to the previous all time high, which was in November of 2021. And because of the market kind of turmoil and the volatility we saw in the market that followed in 2022, coming out of a very, very bad crypto winter, we saw a lot of customers holding on to their cryptos. So not selling and not making any movements, waiting for the opportune and right time to do that. Crypto now reaching or Bitcoin specifically now reaching its all-time high again. We see that there's been a lot of movement again. Or a lot of our investors are finally at a profit level again, and ready to make some moves and maybe diversify their holdings. So very interesting time at this stage, and especially looking at what the market is doing. For us working in the industry specifically, it's very exciting also to see. We look at Bitcoin specifically. I referenced this earlier on in terms of the Bitcoin halving that's coming up.
Yep.
So Bitcoin specifically moves in these 4-year cycles, and that's mainly driven by the halving. Now, how Bitcoin is generated, new Bitcoin is added to the blockchain through a process called mining. And this mining is done by computers that run very, very complex mathematical algorithms to solve, validation queries. And once those queries are resolved and the algorithm is solved, then the miner, which in this instance is a computer, is rewarded with new Bitcoin being added to the blockchain. Every 4 years, that reward that these miners get is halved. And in the next halving, which I mentioned would probably happen in the next 2 weeks or so, is going to bring the reward down to just over 3 Bitcoin that is going to be added to the blockchain for each reward. That brings in a scarcity problem for Bitcoin. Obviously, less and less Bitcoin being added to the blockchain, and with increased institutional demand and global interest in Bitcoin, you have a supply and demand issue, and that kind of has as a result certain drivers and movements in the market. This has been generally the focus of what makes the Bitcoin market move if we look back at the previous cycles. But what is very interesting, and it's very unprecedented for Bitcoin at this stage, is earlier in this year, in January, we saw that the SEC in the US approved 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs after years of deliberation and rejections, and it finally happened, and these spot Bitcoin ETFs were listed on stock exchanges in the US, which signaled a significant boost of confidence for the Bitcoin world and the crypto world in general, where we now see that there's institutional approval for this asset class. And now we're seeing that millions and millions of dollars of institutional money is flowing into cryptocurrency and into Bitcoin, and that's completely unprecedented. So where we in the previous cycles we saw a lot of movement coming in the Bitcoin price post the halving, we've seen this now pre the halving, with the halving still yet to happen. So it's almost impossible for us to predict what's going to happen in terms of price movements or anything like that. But it is very exciting because with each cycle, there's new developments and new movements that bring about, a lot of new and interesting things.
And look, I think there's still quite a big proportion of cryptocurrency that is speculative. Okay, we look at these meme coins, a dog and a cat and a rabbit and a fox and who knows what else is coming out, right? And because I've got an interest in this area, and clearly the social graphs on TikTok and YouTube clearly have got me as a target for selling, meme coins. I see a lot of these posts that go up of influencers kind of peddling these coins, saying, "Oh, this is the next greatest thing, and this is the price it's definitely going to go to." I think one thing you just said, which I think we need to make abundantly clear: no one knows. No one knows what the price of Bitcoin or Ethereum or XRP or Shiba Inu or all the other 20,000 that you mentioned. No one actually knows what the price is. So if someone's telling you it's going to get to 100,000 or a million, I saw one yesterday. It was $5 million a coin for Bitcoin. Guys, listen, you have to do your own research. If it sounds too good to be true, the old saying is it probably is, right? So just make sure you're kind of doing your due diligence. Yes, there are lots of people that have made lots and lots of money, and you hear about them all the time on social media. But you very rarely hear about those people that have lost a ton of money as well by making wrong investments, following trends that don't really exist. And I think one thing to ask you, Christo, actually, is from your perspective, maybe if you can give a view from South Africa, is are people doing this now or investing in crypto now as a get rich quick scheme, or are they actually doing this because of the reasons you mentioned? It's a store of value. I'm hedging against the rand. I can see there is going to be, especially in the three main coins. There has been continual growth over the last 10 years, and you plot that against either the rand, or you plot that against even gold or any other real asset class. There's very few, if any, that follow the same kind of, yes, there are peaks and troughs and there are dips, of course. There is volatility in anything, crypto related. But I suppose the question is, what are you seeing as a trend? Are people holding store of value, hedging against the rand? Are people looking at this as I'm going to put 10,000 rand in, and in a week's time it's going to be worth 100,000 rand? Are you able to get that data? Do you have conversations with customers around that?
So I think, it's all of the above. We see everything. So we see a lot of customers and a significant movement towards diversifying their investment portfolio. People who allocate a specific amount every month to purchase cryptocurrency. A lot of people have that on repeat buy, where they, every month they purchase the same amount in fiat currency and build up their crypto portfolio. And we also see, in terms of the business use case, there's a lot of, industrious people out there that is also taking advantage of the markets. So, for instance, if you look at arbitrage trading, right? So the price difference with the cryptocurrencies are listed for on the different exchanges. That minimal change or difference in the price gives an opportunity for a lot of customers to do arbitrage trading. So we see that use case as well. When we also see with people just, absolutely crypto natives who want to, invest all of their or convert all of their fiat into cryptocurrency. And we see that, and they do that through obviously an exchange such as Luno, because you do need that intermediary to take your fiat or your rand and to purchase that cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of different use cases out there. Absolutely, we don't know what the markets are going to do in terms of some of these meme coins that you spoke of. Those are coins that we don't really approve of, and on Luno specifically, we don't list any meme coins. So a meme coin is a coin, like you rightfully mentioned, that doesn't really have an underlying utility. Yeah. I mean, if we look at Dogecoin, for instance, that's a coin that was started out as a joke. As these guys who got together and said, listen, we're going to take a picture of a cute dog, create a cryptocurrency of it and see what happens. And, the world just thought, okay, well, why not? Very, very, very speculative, and it goes up and down significantly. So very, very high risk. But then you also have cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, whereas Bitcoin, has a very, very strong underlying structure. The foundations of the Bitcoin are supported by the white paper. And then we have Ethereum as well, the Ethereum blockchain that is continuously optimized and improved on to facilitate transactions on that blockchain. And the team that works on that blockchain continuously improves it. They push out upgrades to improve it constantly. So what I would suggest is anybody that wants to have not yet started in cryptocurrency or invested in cryptocurrency, before just looking at the market cap list and seeing, okay, which of the coins have the biggest market cap, do a little bit more research, understand the underlying fundamentals of each of these cryptocurrencies, understand your own need for wanting to diversify into cryptocurrency and see if it matches up.
Yeah.
If you want to use it as an alternative investment, look at obviously what kind of return you want to get from your investment. Look at your risk portfolio or your risk profile as well. What's your risk appetite rather? Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile. We've just come out of a down market. We are now entering a significant rally, or we're in a rally at the moment with the price, hovering very close to that all-time high, surpassing it previously. But it's still the onus is on the consumer, on the investor, to do their research, to make sure that they only invest as much as they are willing, to ultimately lose, because it is a speculative asset, but also to do their due diligence and their homework on which cryptocurrency exchange they use to purchase that. And I think that's where the regulation in South Africa comes into play so crucially. So in October of 2022, the FSCA, the Financial Conduct Sector Authority in South Africa, classified cryptocurrency as a financial product. And what that means is that all cryptocurrency players, which includes the exchanges, but also other cryptocurrency businesses that the majority of their business model is around cryptocurrency, will have to apply through the FSCA for a financial services provider license. And that means that these companies will have to be compliant with the FASE Act. So this is a very crucial development in South Africa. And I think what the most significant element to consider here is that consumers now have a framework to validate whether or not a cryptocurrency player is complying with the regulation and a better option to take. I mean, the same with any kind of bank or financial institution. It's very important to make sure that these players follow the regulation, they have all of their compliance checks and balances in place, and that they adhere to the law. And now the cryptocurrency industry in South Africa falls under that regulation as well. So that's also a very important development in terms of consumer protection. Now, obviously, the regulation can't be a fail-safe against the risk that any consumer takes in terms of where they invest and which cryptocurrency they invest, but at least for the player or the company that they invest with, and they give their hard-earned cash to convert into cryptocurrency, that now falls under a regulatory framework.
Which I think is vitally important, especially what we saw, last year with FTX. I saw, Sam, whatever his name is, he got 25 years in prison, right, for that fiasco, and a lot of people were left, a lot shorter than what they started with. So. Regulation is important. I think it builds consumer confidence. But you mentioned obviously that your whilst it's regulated, it's not the same as kind of the Banking Act, right? Where your certain amount of capital is sort of guaranteed by the SARB in case the bank collapses. It's not that kind of regulation, right? This is about regulating the intermediary, the crypto asset service provider, or anyone involved in sort of cryptocurrencies to ensure that they comply with things like AML and KYC, and they have security measures in place. They're impenetrable in terms of being hacked, et cetera, et cetera. Is that kind of the messaging that's going to consumers now, or will be?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cryptocurrency industry is regulated by the FASE Act. The FASE Act stands for the Financial Advisory and Intermediary Act. And what that means is that anybody that offers the service or sells cryptocurrency or offers cryptocurrency as part of their core business model will have to comply with the regulations set out. So meaning if you are acting in the capacity of a financial advisor to make sure that you follow the rules according to how to give that advice, what can you advise your clients on, what kind of due diligence you need to do. If you act as an intermediary service, which most exchanges will fall under, what is then the requirements for that exchange to follow? And there's a few things that needs to happen there, but that we need to consider. I mean, if we look at what that means for a company such as Luno, the key individuals and the representatives of Luno, they need to be financially sound. They need to have the relevant qualifications and work experience. They need to be honest. They need to meet all of those fit and proper requirements. And then also making sure that the company follows all of their compliance checks, making sure that they do their KYC or know your customer data, making sure that the ID documents and the proof of address and all of those things are checked. Then we've got further steps in terms of AML, anti-money laundering, checks and balances in place, making sure that the cryptocurrency which is being bought on our platform is not being used for money laundering purposes, for terrorist financing. And that's something that we are very, very strict and very compliant on. We've already been very compliant on this since the beginning days. But the regulatory framework just now puts in place a formal process where all industry players needs to comply with. And I think that's very important to note. In terms of, the difference between the Banks Act as well, we've gone at Luno, we've gone a step further to make sure that we give customers that surety that they need to make sure that the cryptocurrency that they buy on our platform is actually accounted for. And I think you referenced the FTX situations for the people who are not aware or don't follow the crypto industry that closely. FTX was one of the major global exchanges that collapsed towards the end of 2022 because of large scale fraud and corporate mismanagement. And that's basically what happened. Was customers bought crypto on this exchange, and instead of actually purchasing that crypto and safeguarding it, the exchange used it for their own purposes. So there was large scale fraud involved there. And it's not a cryptocurrency or a crypto industry problem. This is just a lack of corporate governance problem. There weren't those checks and balances in place to make sure that a company of that scale, was checked, right? And I think that's the biggest shortfall that we have with companies or with an industry that falls outside of a regulatory framework.
Yeah.
And that is what this regulatory framework now tries to prevent. And I think this is where South Africa is for sure way ahead of many other countries in the world in terms of putting that framework in place. Luno, for instance, we are publishing a monthly proof of reserve, which is not required by regulation, but it is a step that we take to make sure that customers feel safe, that their cryptocurrency is actually held and accounted for, and that we can't touch it, right? So that it is completely separated from our corporate funds, the money that we use to run our business, our operations, and every single rand that is being spent on our platform to purchase cryptocurrency, and every cryptocurrency or unit of cryptocurrency that our customers have bought is actually in safe custody and accounted for, and we can't touch it. And that's, independently verified. We do that every month with, auditor Moore Johannesburg. And it's something that we pride ourselves in, that, we've gone this extra step that is not required. There's no need for us to really do this, but we feel that it's important to give customers that surety so that if there's ever another major industry scandal, Luno can stand back and say, listen, we've done what we could to make sure that our customers' funds are accounted for and safe, and that we are verified that it is kept safe.
And do you see a point in the not so distant future, maybe it happens now, I don't know, but the independent financial advisors who usually have some, whether they're independent or not, I don't know, that's a grey area. But that they have a list of sort of portfolios, whether it be stocks and shares or ETFs or whatever it may be. Do you see a point where these IFAs will start to say, listen, this is your risk profile. Maybe you kind of got a low risk tolerance. Maybe 2% or 3% of your portfolio should be made up of crypto. Do you see that? I mean, is that happening now, or do you see that happening in the future?
I think we're already kind of nearing that, and in the very near future, we've already spoken to a lot of asset and wealth managers where they would advise that crypto form part of a regular investment portfolio, and where many people would advocate for allocating around 5% of their investment portfolio to something like crypto. And that can obviously change how the market matures and how the industry matures as well. But I definitely see how this regulation now makes it possible for financial advisors to, number one, learn about the industry, learn the ins and outs, making sure that they do their annual corporate professional development, and that they learn about what they're advising on. And in that sense will also grow the industry and will grow confidence in the industry. So I do think that it's quite a groundbreaking stage of development that we're in. And I do think that there's a big need for financial advisors to educate themselves on this industry. There's a lot of I don't want to overgeneralize here, but there's a lot of people that watch a YouTube video or two YouTube videos, and then all of a sudden they call themselves experts, but they don't really understand the nuance that drives these market movements. So I think for people to also just take note when receiving any kind of formal advice on cryptocurrency from a qualified financial advisor, to make sure that that financial advisor is actually allowed and qualified to advise on crypto, and that the company that they work for does have the FSP license with the crypto category added. I think that's a very important thing to consider. Not everybody, just because you are a financial advisor, doesn't make you able to advise on cryptocurrency, for instance. They're only allowed to advise on the products and categories that they have been approved for and qualified for. So that's also important.
I wasn't aware of that, so that's good to know. It's opened kind of a can of worms about the future of financial advisors and whether they'll be replaced by robots. But Christo, I think that's one for another day, right? But I do think that the younger generation who is looking at making investments or even buying insurance. I was with an insurance company just a couple of days ago and we were talking about this. They're not going to use a broker or an IFA because they can actually do their own research. There is so much content. I think the difficulty is, how do you know what's true and what's not? How do you know who to believe and who not to believe? And I'll stick to what I said a little while ago. If someone's telling you the price of X coin is going to go to Y, they don't know. So I think it's important for anyone to do their due diligence on, the history of that coin. I know sort of history doesn't necessarily tell you what the future performance is going to be, but I always I think in the early days, I viewed crypto as going to a casino. Right. I would go to the casino with 500 Rand, and I'd be prepared to lose 500 Rand because that was my night out. Okay. And I kind of viewed crypto in that way as well. And then when I put 500 Rand in and then I made, 1,000 Rand, I would take out that 500 Rand. So I'm now gambling with money that wasn't mine in the first place, effectively. Right. And kind of the houses playing against each other. And that's kind of the way I looked at this many years ago. But I think the sentiment's probably changed. I think there is more confidence in the future of cryptocurrencies. Yes, there is still a lot of volatility. Even over the last couple of days, Christo, I've seen the price of, Bitcoin go from $72,000 to what is it now, $66,000. XRP was 67, or is it peak? I think it was 91 or something not so long ago, and it's now back down to 57. So there is always these peaks and troughs, and I think using or having the view of crypto as it's a casino. Right. I think I've changed my view on that a lot, only because of people like yourself and being heavily involved in this sector. But seeing as the underlying value and commodity around this, it's not just a fictitious bits and bytes, right? This is kind of real thing. It's underpinned by some of the most, or some of the smartest people probably on the planet who code in this, who understand the blockchain. It's irrefutable. I think gone perhaps are the days, especially with the likes of Luno and the regulators, where crypto's used to buy things on the dark web. I mean, maybe it still is. I've never been on the dark web, right? But I'm sure you probably can't do that using a Luno card or using your crypto that you bought from Luno. Maybe there are ways to do that, but that's another topic for another day. But I think that the general message I wanted to give today, and I thank you for, I suppose, kind of agreeing with me, is crypto is here. It's here to stay, in my own personal view. it can be used for a number of different things. So it can be used as a store of value. It can be used to hedge against your domestic currency, whether that be rand or any other currency. There is a utility behind many of the cryptos that are out there. It's not just about saving and making money. It's about utilizing the money for different things. We haven't even spoken about cross-border payments, which I think is probably the single biggest industry that's going to be disrupted by cryptocurrency. If we look at the incumbent players and how much they charge and how slow that process is, that's, again, probably one for another day, Christo. But, I think that the message is make sure people do their research. Don't listen to some of these influencers that pop up on the TikToks and the YouTubes of this world. A lot of it, these people are paid to promote coins, and they're telling you this next best thing, but just be careful out there, I think, is the message I would give. Chris, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, or you disagree with anything I've said.
I mean, no, I agree. I think absolutely. People need to do their own research. They need to be very clear on what their purpose is for purchasing crypto. But also, I think to just move away from that highly speculative, where you get in quick, see if you can make a quick buck, and then get out. There's a few things to consider there. That's obviously a risk. If some people want to take that, that's a risk that they need to take. But look at the long-term value, the long-term growth, take a macro approach, see, what the charts and the trends are doing, as you would with any other investment product. You won't buy stocks in the company if you didn't do your research on that company, looking at their performance. And I think a very similar approach to crypto is needed here, because crypto is also, a regulated financial product. Our tax revenue service in South Africa, SARS, have been keeping an eye on crypto since the early days. So cryptocurrency is taxable. Any gains that you make in this process is taxable, and it's subject to either personal income tax or capital gains tax, depending on how long you hold it, what the conditions were in which you purchased it. And I would suggest that you reach out to your own tax advisor for that clarity. But there's all of these things to consider, right? It's in my mind, crypto has evolved and moved way beyond that initial thoughts of just a get rich quick thing that we kind of saw on the media in the early days, which I think was very, very kind of disjointed view of the industry as a whole. And as you said, the underlying technology and the structure that cryptocurrency is built on is going to become so integral in our global financial world that you won't be able to differentiate the two. And the last thing I think I want to say to this thing, there's this notion that, you mentioned the dark web, that crypto has this reputation that it's being used for all of these illicit things. Of course it happens, but it happens with fiat currency as well. It happens with dollars. The United States dollar, I think, is the main currency that is being used for any kind of illicit activities, fraud and terrorist financing and so forth. But the wonderful thing about blockchain and about cryptocurrency is that nothing is hidden. Everything is visible on the blockchain, and there are amazing companies out there, companies like Chainalysis, that actually can track any single transaction on the blockchain, going from its point of origin and how it changes through various exchanges and how that travels. And obviously companies like Luno use technology such as that to prevent any kind of illicit activity taking place, right? And we have all of the checks and balances in place to make sure that doesn't happen. But I mean, I think the crypto industry as well is so complex and nuanced that there's so many different use cases that it can be used for. It's very, very much ahead of any other financial kind of innovation we have at the moment. The one thing that I think we need to have an understanding is that regulation and global regulation needs to keep track with this innovation. And unfortunately, that is a little bit of a slow process. So innovation, leapfrogs and it develops quite vastly and quickly, but regulation is quite slow to follow. So there's a lot of things like, the tax implications. What is it? Is cryptocurrency, is it a tender? Is it a currency? Is it or is it an asset class? That's also debate. Can it be used for cross-border payments? Is it allowed within the regulatory framework? How is that being driven? I mean, in South Africa, there's this big conversation around the exchange control, right? When does cryptocurrency become what is that point of externalization? When does it actually leave the border because it's all kind of in the cloud or sits above? I mean, that's also a very in-depth conversation for another day. But there's a lot of nuance and a lot of complexity, and I think for people who want to delve into cryptocurrency, that want to get their fingers wet, so to speak, do your research, go to a platform such as Luno. We have a whole education section called Discover at Luno, where all the ins and outs of cryptocurrency, how to get started, what are the things that you need to consider. And, on a platform such as Luno, you can start small. You can literally buy crypto for as little as 10 Rand. So there's no need to go, okay, I need to buy a whole Bitcoin, which I think is impossible for most people. Absolutely. But you can buy a fraction, and you can start playing around with these different cryptocurrencies. And that's the best way to learn. Get comfortable with it, do your research, have conversations with your friends, read in the media, and listen to podcasts such as these that we try to educate people about what is the cryptocurrency industry and what you need to look out for.
Listen, a friend of mine, actually, I was talking to a couple of weeks ago, how he got started in crypto is that he would save his spare change. Right, so he'd go to a shop and he'd spend 98 Rand, and he'd get 2 Rand back, virtually in his account, and he would use that, and he'd only use that to then go and buy crypto, and that was his entry into the world of crypto, and he's done very well for himself. Not to say that that's the same for everyone, but I think if you wanted to start small, it doesn't need to be, as you quite rightly said, you don't need to go and spend $66,000 on one Bitcoin or $3,500 on one Ethereum. You buy fractions, and then you still obviously benefit from the fluctuations, whether it be up or down. But it's a good way to kind of test the water, see if you're comfortable with that element of risk. I know. There's people, and I'm probably one of those, that looks at the charts way too often, and looks at the price way too often, and gets sort of heart palpitations when it drops like 5 or 6%. And you're like, I lose all my money. And then when it goes, up, you're like, I've made a load of money, and it's a bit of a roller coaster, right? But not everyone's a geek like me, so I think if you've got it there. Don't check it every day. You'll probably drive yourself mad. But just keep an eye on what the price is doing. As you said, at the very early on, even listening to the news in the morning or in the afternoon, you'll hear the price of Bitcoin and some of the other coins, announced with the US dollar and the sterling and the euro. So very much becoming mainstream. Christo, thank you very, very much. I've taken plenty of your time. I know you've got a million things to do, so I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We'll put some links to Luno, but also to the training academy in the comments below. So if anyone wants to sort of educate themselves on the world of sort of crypto, how to get involved, how you convert your Rand to Bitcoin or whatever it may be, there'll be some sort of guides down there. As I said at the very beginning, it's there is volatility, so just make sure you do your research before you put any money in, and be open to having a bit of a risk tolerance. I think that's very, very important. Christo, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.